Hello, this is Jay Mitchell. We are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. First, we have Dictators in Power from Ragnar OKXG, and that's a cross post from the Murdered by Words subreddit, and that's a tweet from Senator Mike Lee, who tweeted, "Name a fascist dictator whose agenda entailed limiting the size, cost, and power of government." And then the guy replied, this Armani at History, Armani 2 replied, "Hitler, Pinochet, Mussolini, are you all brain dead?" And yeah, that reminds me a lot of 1984, for war is peace, freedom is slavery, big government is actually small government, and vice versa. Hitler and Mussolini never really campaigned on an argument of reducing government power, but since they're in the out group, that they might as well be these very vulgarly libertarian people. Them, at least when it comes to all the out groups, is pretty much the same to the in group. It seems like the libertarians and the Christian nationalists might as well be the exact same people when it comes to that. When it comes to their perspective. So yeah, Hitler and Mussolini, they didn't really campaign or force an agenda of limiting the size, cost, and power of government. They wanted centralized big government instead of decentralized big government. And that's kind of the anti-libertarian position. But since they're right-coded rather than left-coded, they might as well have been libertarians to the blue NPCs of Reddit. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump's tax cuts to add $5 to $11 trillion to the national debt, but at least we forced some government agencies to cancel their Politico subscriptions from Big Squid 69, and that's a link to a Yahoo story from Bloomberg. Trump tax costs estimated at $5 trillion to $11 trillion, and yeah, I do think tax cuts are probably good, but Trump, the Republicans only usually just give them to the wealthy. And yeah, I think everyone should get a tax cut if they want. I don't think people should be forced to pay taxes at all if they don't want to. But regardless, the national debt's going to grow regardless of which branch of the uniparty is in power. And that's my thoughts on that issue. At the very least, I do think, at least they are cutting some government spending to stuff like cutting. The government was paying for a lot of federal workers' Politico subscriptions. I don't think the government should be paying for that. But yeah, they'll just spend that somewhere else. Stone Toss had a good comic recently about how Elon gives Trump big money. Here's all the money we saved from the Department of Government Efficiency, and then Trump says thanks, and then he walks over to give the bag of money to Israel. So the government's always gonna spend money and increase the national debt. It doesn't really matter which branch of the uniparty it is. They might do it in slightly different ways, but there's really no practical difference between them. Then we have House Democrats denied entry to the Department of Education from NBCNews.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. And yeah, I think it's interesting how when the out group tries to force their way into a building, it's an insurrection like what happened with January 6th. But when the in group tries to do it, it's completely justified. And yeah, just because you're an elected official doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. A lot of people on the left, they said, "Oh, I don't like the presidential immunity doctrine the Supreme Court just put out." But when the Democrats want to do whatever they want, when they want to just go into the Department of Education, even though they didn't schedule an appointment, they're elected officials, they should be doing whatever they want. So it just depends on who's in the in group and who's in the out group most of the time, and not much more than that. Then we have Vance bring back Doge staffer who resigned after racist post surfaced from thehill.com by Ninja Lover, and they added, "Shock to tell you, who would have thought this administration embraced racist?" And yeah, I personally think, people are tired of cancel culture. I personally think, everyone sometimes shit post or edge post online. I don't think that's a reason to cancel them. I do think that this guy's, hopefully this is the beginning of the end for cancel culture, but I doubt it because, this guy's seen as more being in the in group rather than the out group. The right will still justify canceling people when they're in the out group, I think. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Doge staffer previously fired from cybersecurity company for leaking secrets from Gizmodo.com by Tom 13. And they added, I guess that's the one just wants to adjust a black hat hacker. Evidence of racism has not been exposed yet. And yeah, I do think, some government employees aren't going to be good, but there was already tons of bad government employees before Trump took office, but Reddit didn't care because they were in the in-group. Reddit, they have a whole subreddit, the Fed News subreddit, where the federal workers just say, oh, we're the good federal workers, we're going to resist Trump, and they just circle jerk themselves. But they don't care, they never care about those guys for being inefficient jerks. They only care because this guy's in the out group rather than the in group, since Reddit has to hate Doge because Trump bad, Elon bad, and yeah, Reddit increasingly has no principles other than Orange Man bad, Tesla Man bad. It usually despises Christianity, but that Washington Bishop who essentially just woke scolded Trump from the pulpit, suddenly she's one of the good ones. These people have no values other than Orange Man bad. And yeah, that's increasingly what all the subreddit is. It might as well just be called Orange Man bad, Democrats good. Then we have Trump seriously threatened to annex Canada, the inside story of a high-stakes call between Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump as the tariff deadline loomed. And that's an archive link to the Toronto Star posted by Baton 13. And yeah, I personally don't think Trump's being that serious. Trump says a lot of shit that he doesn't plan on backing up. So I personally don't really care for his general spazziness, and but I personally don't think this was actually going to be a real thing. It's the subreddit always has to say Orange Man bad. That's pretty much all it is, and it's every post is just Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad. Then we have Governor J.B. Pritzker responds to garbage DOJ lawsuit over sanctuary city policies from ABC7.Chicago.com by Ninja Lover. And they added, Governor Pritzker says he had no idea that the DOJ was taking Chicago, Cook County, and the state to court. The Department of Justice is accusing Chicago, Illinois, and Cook County of prohibiting federal officers from carrying out immigration enforcement. And yeah, ultimately, I would say, I personally think a lot of people getting deported probably deserve it. They're probably thugs and criminals. But it ultimately comes down to I do think the libertarian position is for local government rather than federal government. If Chicago and Cook County want to violate the national government, I think they should be able to do it. And if the government, and yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. I personally would just say, at some point you just gotta push them and just secede altogether. But a lot of the woke left thinks the session's bad because it's like they hate living under Trump, but they would never secede, and they still they still hate the Electoral College, even though Trump won the popular vote as well. It doesn't really matter what is actually happening. It just matters what the narrative is, and that's very much what you see on Reddit. Then we have Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley unite to impose religious orthodoxy from Lemon Limelight, and they said Senator Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley plan to introduce a bill to cap interest rates at 10%, and unsurprisingly, it's motivated by populism. We cannot continue to allow big banks to make huge profits. The biggest credit card issuers get richer and richer. But look deeper and you may find a loftier inspiration for their crusade. Sanders mentions usurious credit card interest rates. Hawley said anti-usury bill should be a priority. Usury sounds like medieval moralizing from true believers. Also, the 10% cap is lower than either of their previous proposals. An 18% cap was good enough for Hawley in 2023, and 15% once satisfied Sanders. Where did the immaculate 10% arrive? Was it divine revelation? And yeah, it just goes to show you how a lot of the populist left and the populist right really want the same thing. They want control over all the markets, in this case the credit card market. And yeah, I personally don't care for whatever the interest rates are, but companies should be able to set them how they feel like. They shouldn't have the government telling them what they can and can't set them at. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have The Evolution of Governance, AI, Blockchain, and Quantum Democracy from Michael Feuerstein.medium.com by Universal Truth X13. And yeah, I personally I'm not really into all those things, but I think the evolution of governance, will increasingly become more technocratic as time moves on, and you're definitely seeing that. And yeah, I I do think, as Joe Biden said last month in his farewell address, you're increasingly seeing the tech industrial complex. I personally don't agree with the reasons he said that. He was just mad because he lost control of the tech industrial complex. But regardless, I definitely do think the tech industrial complex is going to be a big thing in the future, and will probably be how they eventually implement the CBD, the CBDC and social credit system. Trump signed a bill. He said no CBDCs, but I think eventually another president will overturn that, and he'll say we need a central bank digital currency and a social credit system, so to get rid of all the wrongthink. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump orders U.S. to prioritize refugee resettlement of South Africans of European descent from CBSNews.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I personally don't think, the U.S. should be prioritizing refugees of one race over another. I personally thought Trump was elected on an anti-immigration platform rather than a pro-immigration platform. But, if the U.S. wants to justify prioritizing refugees of one race over another, I think it should be able to do so. But it's just gonna only further calls that Trump's a racist and all that. Even though I don't think he's that racist. I just think it's more of just a media narrative. But regardless, this is definitely not going to help claims in his favor. Then we have Consumer Financial Watchdog is ordered by acting director to stop fighting financial abuse from CNN.com by Donald Key. And yeah, I don't care for everything the government orders, but sometimes, the government's going to order something you don't like. And yeah, sometimes you just have to cope with it. Then we have Donald Trump's amends CBS lawsuit to claim 60 Minutes Kamala Harris interview unfairly diverted viewers from his Truth Social platform by Paton13 from Deadline.com. That's crosswords from the r/law subreddit. And yeah, I think that's kind of bullshit, but the Democrats have tons of bullshit as well, but this subreddit would never call them out on it. Then we have, in case you're American curious what's being said on Canadian media by Donkey, and that's crosswords from the TikTok cringe subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't give two shits about Canada, but they're free to say whatever they want. I don't really care. Yeah, then we have, he gets to make the decisions. Jim Jordan argues Trump can ignore judges from rawstory.com by Donald Key, and that's a crosspost from the News of the Stupid subreddit. And yeah, I do think checks and balances are important when it comes to government, but a lot of the courts are occupied by progressive activist judges. I think that's important to remember as well. I think they're just kind of mad that they don't control the courts, and yeah, I think that's why a lot of the progressives, they say, oh, the Supreme Court's corrupt because they're mad they don't control it. So yeah, I personally don't care for courts at all. I think people should be settling your speech rather than courts. But you gotta say where you're going. It's just really who's in the in-group, who's in the out-group. And if Biden said this, it'd be completely justified to them. And when Biden says, oh, the Supreme Court's corrupt, they say, oh, yeah, because, they didn't control the Supreme Court. But, it's all just, as I said earlier, as I say pretty much every episode, who's in the in-group, who's in the out-group. Then we have Musk calls for judge impeachment. Republicans aim to hammer out Trump's budget bill from thehill.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, that's another post. I have really nothing to say about that one. Then we have J.D. Vance suggests judges aren't allowed to control Trump after court block his policies from MSN.com by Ragnar OKXG. And yeah, as I said earlier, it's just really who's in the out group, who's in the in group. Nothing else really matters to these people. Then we have Paula White, the leader of Trump's White House faith office, speaking in tongues from Donald Key, and that's crosswords from the Religious Fruitcake subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think they should have a White House faith office in the first place. I think that's just growing the government, even if Trump's saying shrink the government. But regardless, these people don't like Christianity and say, oh, we need separation of church and state. When woke Bishop woke scolds Trump, suddenly they love her. These people really have no, as I said earlier, they have no values or principles other than Orange Man bad. Then we have killed the Federal Department of Education from Lemon Limelight, and they said, from reason, kill the Department of Education. Among the encouraging elements of the second Trump administration are more serious efforts to pare back the size and role of government that we've seen in decades, and while it was most certainly take an act of Congress to succeed, plans to deep six the Department of Education, useless bureaucracy born as political payoff, would be an important step in the right direction. Abolishing Department of Education could give states more freedom to run their schools, something particularly important for controversial issues. Trump used federal funding for education as leverage in his executive orders on transgender athletes, DEI, and K-12 radical indoctrination. Should more people support or reduce federal role in education? And I think we should have the state play no role in education. I think we gotta get the state out of education entirely, just like everything else. But, people don't really care about that. They just care that since Trump's against the Department of Education, that must make it a good thing. They say, oh, how are we all going to be educated if we get rid of the Department of Education? Well, you already have Reddit, which is proof about that education is already horrible in the U.S. because Reddit is pretty much full of pseudo-intellectual bullshit that is the product of the modern-day U.S. education system under the Department of Education, which is probably the greatest argument for it getting thrown out altogether. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.